A good evening, and live from the Kenyatta University Communications Center, this is KUTV Prime Time News. A warm welcome to the broadcast where we have a lot to inform you on matters happening today. But first, a highlight of tonight's top stories. "91% of registered voters will take part in the August 9 general elections this year, according to T4 poll. Kenya Kwanza allies call for the arrest of ODM leader Raila Odinga over Madoa remark. Kanu denies plan to ditch the One Kenya alliance. Kenyans urged to take the initiative for kidney screening as the world celebrates the World Kidney Day. One boy on the sign language interpretation, and my name is Emmanuel Kutosi. Now, we begin with a story where recent TIFA opinion research show 91% of the registered voters will participate in the coming general election exercise, as 9% say they will boycott the polls. 20% have no faith in the IEBC to deliver a credible election 5 months to the poll. The research also puts ODM ahead in popularity in the counties of Nairobi and Busia, while UDA leads in Murang'a.
In the opinion research conducted between 2nd and 8th of March this year, 91% of registered voters have confirmed they will participate in the August 9 polls, while 9% say they will boycott the exercise due to reasons ranging from poor crop of leaders vying for various seats to lack of faith that the polls will result in any noticeable change. 20% of the registered voters have no faith in the ability of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to deliver credible elections. ODM party enjoys popularity in the county of Nairobi at 23%, followed closely with UDA at 22%. In Busia County, ODM leads with 46%, while UDA has 7%. UDA, on the other hand, leads in popularity in Murang'a at 69%, followed by Jubilee at 11%, while ODM has 6%. In the race for governorship, Johnson Sakaja leads in popularity in Nairobi County at 23%, followed by Tim Wanyonyi at 14%. In Busia County, Florence Mutua leads with 31%, while John Sakwa Bunyasi has 19%. Irungu Kangata is the most popular gubernatorial candidate in Murang'a at 44%, followed by Jamlek Kamau at 23%. The poll shows IEBC has its work cut out to restore the public faith in the commission ahead of the general elections. Henry Tende, KUTV.
And on another report, during a visit to the Masai Mara Game Reserve, the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife, Najib Balala, was joined by Gabon's Minister for Water and Forest and Climate Change, Professor Lee White, where Najib Balala noted Kenya's participation in the COP26 declaration with the aim of creating a more sustainable climate in Kenya. Cabinet Secretary Balala mentioned that the African countries should take time to create synergies and cooperate in combating climate change in the continent.
The Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife, Najib Balala, has confirmed that Kenya is currently implementing the COP26 Declaration on Sustainability and Climate Change. The declaration includes all hospitality and tourism facilities in Kenya to adopt renewable energy and restore degraded areas in our national parks and reserves with a concerted effort on reforestation, among others. Keriako Tobiko, while in COP26 summit, addressed the issue of developing countries being the most affected by the rapid climate change, noting that devastating droughts and floods leave many countries at a high risk, both socially and economically wise.
So Kenya is perpetually, like most part of Africa and developing countries, perpetually under emergency. We're under emergency all the time throughout the year. You know, of course, what is happening in the rising lakes and so on and so forth. Yes. So Kenya is affected like every other country, but more so Kenya being climate vulnerable, one of the most climate vulnerable countries.
The Cabinet Secretary visited Embo River Lodge, which is a case study for innovative climate change solution that help to fight against climate change. The lodge produces its own cooking gas. Cabinet Secretary Balala lauded the camp, saying with more lodges and tourism facilities adopting these practical and successful innovations, Kenya hopes to align with the COP26 zero carbon emissions by 2050.
Today we are here in Masai Mara with the minister from Gabon, and definitely, you know, the issue of carbon credits, we are learning from them, and we are sharing knowledge. At the same time, how do we make sure that we stop the illegal wildlife trade? It is fundamental, especially now we go to CITES in November. We need to have a strong voice from Africa to fight against illegal wildlife trade, to mitigate against loss of wildlife biodiversity, and to make sure that communities benefit from this resource.
In line with COP26 declaration, Professor Lee noted that Gabon and Kenya share very similar views on the environment and climate change, highlighting wildlife conservation, which is a key for both countries, and mitigating the challenge of climate change. Christine Brenda, KUTV.
And away from that, on a political belt, while on a political vote hunt in the coastal region of the country, leaders allied to the Kenya Kwanza outfit have hit out at the government to take action on ODM leader Raila Odinga for the madoa-doa remark at a dinner rally in Wajir. They have accused security operators in the country of a double-standard approach, calling back to the arrest of Meru Senator Limithika Linturi, who was apprehended after issuing the remark in a UDA rally in Eldoret.
Lile la double standards. Kenya hii sheria ni msumeno. Sheria ikienda mbele ikate, kirudi nyuma ikate.
Matters Health, where Health Chief Administrative Secretary Dr. Mercy Mwangangi has called on Kenyans to consider regular kidney screening. Dr. Mwangangi says that this will reduce the cost of treatment and further damage to the kidney. She was speaking at a World Kidney Day celebrations held at the Kenyatta National Hospital, as George Mapesa now reports.
As the world marks Kidney Day, Kenyans have been asked to take the initiative of having regular kidney examination in order to find out their status and get early treatment before worse situation.
We always use cake.
The call was made at the celebration of World Kidney Day, which brought together officials from the Ministry of Health, kidney doctors and patients, Kenya Renal Association, and officials from the National Health Insurance Fund.
I look forward to the day where in Kenya we will be saying we've all gone for our health checks, and that NHIF has stepped in for whatever small component, and this is a progressive journey, for whatever small component that we've stepped in that light. And so for me, as I look back and as I reflect, seeing that the burden of disease remains an issue that we need to deal with, seeing that access remains an issue that we need to deal with.
Kenya Renal Association, kidney doctors and patients now wants the government to ease treatment for kidney patients in collaboration with the NHIF.
The current advances in kidney disease treatment, be it dialysis or transplant, should afford those afflicted a comfortable life. This can never be a completely normal life because this is a chronic condition.
In the year 2020 to 2021, our total payout for health coverage was 54 billion. Of that, the total payout for renal and for dialysis payout was 3.84 billion, totaling to 7.1% of the total of.
Kidney transplant survivors present shared their experience, urging Kenyans to avail themselves for kidney screening.
I did my transplant in 2006, and although I have lupus, and I know many lupus patients are hesitant in going for a transplant because they say, if lupus attacked the kidney, then surely if you transplant it will attack that kidney. I would like to encourage all of you to think of getting a transplant.
The government has been called upon to invest in kidney transplant and screening technology, as well as improving the level of experience for kidney doctors at the East Africa Institute of Kidney that is in Kenya. George Mapesa, KUTV.
The Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria is calling for governments to renew the fight against the respiratory illness. In South Africa, a hotspot for TB, a mobile screening team, is trying to make up for the disruptions from the COVID-19 pandemic. Linda Givertash from Johannesburg files the following report.
Have it the other way around. Despite being treatable and preventable, tuberculosis is a leading killer in South Africa. During the coronavirus pandemic, testing for TB dropped dramatically with deadly consequences. Latoya Weiser's 32-year-old partner was among the casualties.
His tongue, he was always saying he's feeling bad. He didn't even taste the food. It's whereby I asked him, let's go to the clinic and test. It's whereby we find out that he's positive.
Although Weiser's partner was on treatment for 2 months, he succumbed to TB last August. Testing did ensure their infant son was put on preventative treatment. Both Weiser and the baby remain healthy, but she struggles with her loss.
I did wish, because if maybe we did find out sooner, maybe he would have still been alive.
Her experience is not unique. An estimated 1.8 billion people globally are infected with TB, disproportionately affecting those in poorer nations. The Global Fund says development of new TB treatments has long stagnated, and the onset of the coronavirus has made matters worse.
We have seen more than 20% drop in the number of people who access diagnosis and treatment, and then the transmission will continue, and that will contribute to overall TB incidence and mortality. TB mortality for the first time increased to 1.5 million from the 1.4 million in 2019.
The new mobile clinic supported by the Global Fund aims to close the gap in TB testing. It's reaching people like Weiser who struggle to get to clinics.
If you don't know, surely you can't protect people next to you from something that you don't know that you have, even if you're not showing any symptoms. So we just check them. After screening, what we normally do, if we pick up that they have TB, we make sure that we trace the TB, like in families, friends, they all come and test.
Governments are also learning from mistakes made during the coronavirus pandemic to improve treatment for illnesses that went neglected.
In hindsight, we should have, when we're investigating for COVID, also investigated for TB. But we have realized that we rectifying our mistakes, we are rechanneling our efforts now to integrate COVID activities with primary healthcare activities, including TB services now.
To ensure efforts like this can have the greatest impact, the Global Fund is appealing to the international community for $18 billion. It says the funding will correct setbacks caused by the pandemic and move the world closer to eliminating diseases like tuberculosis.
And now a look at the COVID statistics in the country, where 11 people have tested positive for the coronavirus from a sample of 4,928 tested in the last 24 hours. The positivity rate is now at 0.2%. Total confirmed positive cases are now at 323,140, and total tests done in the country are 3,423,203. 200 patients have recovered from the disease, with the total recoveries shooting to 317,465. 3 deaths were reported, unfortunately, today, bringing the cumulative fatalities to 5,844. A total of 16,004,428 vaccines have been administered across the country. Of these, 7,902,418 are partially administered, while 7,776,554 are fully administered. Back to politics, where KANU Party Executive Director George Wainaina, through a statement, has denied media reports that the party was planning to ditch the One Kenya Alliance for Azimio la Umoja. This comes a day after the party Secretary General, Honorable Nick Salat, during a party manifesto launch, was quoted saying that they are tired of babysitting Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka due to his indecisive nature. The statement further explains that OKA is just in constant consultations with other coalitions. The executive director, George Wainaina, says that the comments by Honorable Nick Salat do not represent the stance of KANU as a party. Salat has been vocal, urging the party leader, Gideon Moi, to join the Azimio la Umoja coalition. And well, in that report, we are due for our first break right here on KUTV Primetime News. Stay tuned, we'll be back with the day's informative discussion on gender equality. Stay tuned, we'll be back after this.
KUTV, in conjunction with Kenyatta University Funeral Home, is now offering death announcements immediately following our news bulletins at 7 p.m. At this sorrowful time, as you share in your grief, allow us to communicate your announcement of your loved one on KUTV in both Kiswahili and English. For more details, kindly inquire at the KU Funeral Home Service Desk or call 0736 928 380 or dial 020-359-9054.
Magic. I need that magic.
Somebody call 911. Anything for your girl, give me more. And I say my sugary body, den.
Ukiwa na dukuduku la michezo, tunafungua sanduku la dukuduku kwa ufahamu zaidi. Kila danadana, mitimko, mifiatuko na harakati zote ugani, sisi ni wako mwandani. Kukurukakara zote nyanjani, haziwezi kuangaziwa zaidi ya micharazo michezoni. Mimi mwanaspoti wako matata Peter Pinches Mwaora, ndakuwa na jopo lenye maarifa sufufu, nikufahamishe na nikuburudishe wewe shabiki shakiki kwa uhakiki na kindakindaki.
Welcome back to the broadcast, and remember we are streaming live on YouTube at KUTV Kenya Live and Facebook and on KUTV Kenya, and also feel free to engage us on our social media handles at Twitter, where we are at KUTV_Kenya. And now to the discussion of the day, where attention to gender has never been more urgent, and more so gender equality. Earlier this week, we celebrated the International Women's Day, but with the backdrop of an unfortunate incident of a violent act against a female motorist on our well-designed modern road in the capital in the 21st century. Some may argue that this is no new issue. We have an active war in Europe in this age, but it still does not negate the fact that there is a need to assess the inequality gap and how far we have come ever since the start of the campaign to stem the gender disparity in our country. And to execute our local assessment, I'm joined by Winnie Siomboa, an advocate and journalist for human rights, gender lead. Winnie, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm grateful. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and today was the LSK elections. Were you involved?
No, I wasn't.
Oh my goodness. How do we begin this? Anyway, we'll go back to our discussion today. Now, on matters equality, gender equality. Currently in the country, if I'm to come with the topic of gender equality, I kind of remember at a moment in a certain discourse we had where you debunked the idea of men being stronger than women by actually leveling that I could find a woman who's stronger than me. And it brought a sort of double thinking in my mind, and to bring about the fact that as gender, there is a need to have a gender equation that is actually on an equal basis. Now, looking at the country currently, Winnie, how is the equality structure? How are we doing as a country currently?
Well, as a country, I do believe that women are still ranked lower than men. Granted, there are certain aspects or spheres of life where we have seen women excel. And we've seen obviously more women coming out to present themselves for leadership positions. We've seen more women coming out and seeking educational opportunities at all levels, starting from primary education all the way through to tertiary education. And I think one of the youngest PhD holders we have in this country is female. So there's obviously a marked improvement in terms of the places or spaces that women hold. And there's a progressive realization of the advancement of women. But when we talk about gender equality as a concept, I think we are still lagging behind as a country. Look at, for instance, one of the spheres that is more pronounced, and that is the sphere of women in leadership. We have gone as far as a country as even putting in place legislation to allow for what you call gender quotas, the 2/3 gender rule. And this is a constitutional provision. And while at the moment, many people look at it as a principle, as a policy that is addressing women's issues, it is actually a policy that is addressing gender equality, and not just that of women, but that of men as well. But we are unable to attain that as a country. We've not even gone as far as putting in place the supporting legislation that is supposed to enable this constitutional provision become actualized. We have women in parliament who are fighting to be heard, whose voices are still stifled. You can imagine parliament, which is the highest position of representation, where women find themselves, sitting alongside men and making decisions that affect this country. But they still have their voices stifled and are not able to articulate most of the issues that they would like to articulate as adequately as they would like to. We have gone to the extent of even having the Chief Justice advise our president on the need to dissolve Parliament because it failed in enacting the 2/3 gender rule, but that hasn't been done. So that tells you that, the things that we are looking at, where we would want to be, our wishes as women in this country, insofar as equality is concerned, have not been realized. And yes, while we are looking at leadership as one aspect, it has a way of, affecting all the other spheres of life, the economies, the cultural aspects of life, our social interactions. All of those are affected by how, the issue of leadership in this country is a reflection of how the other spheres of life look like for women folk in the country.
And you have touched on several litigation measures that were highlighted maybe by even the Chief Justice. Now, looking at these matters and the fact that we actually have a legal framework and all the necessary maybe laws to try and actually ensure there is equality, even from the parliament status, coming down even to the bottom structures of the government and even the private sector. Is it to say that such litigation, such measures are not taking effect, as in has the law in a way lost its bite?
I wouldn't say that the law has lost its bite because, first of all, a legal recognition is the first step towards effectively guaranteeing that the rights and fundamental freedoms that are enshrined in national constitutions like ours and in other international human rights principles are realized. And in our case, we have a robust constitution that has done exactly that. And apart from, the two-third gender rule that currently has not gotten its supporting legislation, you find that there are other laws that guarantee the rights of women in the country, and this is particularly important, especially in societies where women continue to be or can become vulnerable to discrimination, to abuse and exploitation because the legal protections that we expect there to be are not available, or if you find that they override social and traditional practices that are prejudicial to women's equality. So for us, I would say that as a country, we're doing well. We're doing better than most because we have gotten to a point where we have made that recognition. But also, it's important to realize that the law does not act just because it's there, it's written, that there are other supporting institutions that exist. And, I keep telling people that we are very quick to sometimes say, oh, the judiciary has failed. But the question is, if today the Chief Justice witnessed a crime being committed somewhere, do you think she is able to bring this person to court and prosecute them successfully? And I'd say no. And the reason I say no is because the law is structural. It has to be followed. It has to be followed and implemented in a structural way. So we have institutions that support this, implementation. And we have, for example, the police who do investigations. We have the prosecution that brings or prefers charges against somebody, and unless and then the judiciary that hears these matters and determines how culpable one is. And unless all these three organs, among others, work in a concerted effort, we will not be able to realize the full effect of the law. So what I would say is that there's need for these institutions to work together, and those that are weak to be strengthened. Where there's need for capacity building, there's need for that to happen, so that we don't continue to have incidences where we keep saying that we have a robust law and this law is not working. On the other front is also a question of impunity, and impunity here lies with the highest organs of governance, whereby you expect certain laws to be enacted. Again, I go back to the example of the two-third gender rule, but it doesn't happen. So impunity and lack of political will, which is a reflection of what society feels about women. Because if there was respect for women, and if our cultures and our cultural practices supported women 100%, then you'd find that acceptance of gender equality is very easy. It's not problematic. And therefore, a law like the two-third gender rule would become easy to enact. But because we're fighting more structural biases, it becomes difficult. So laws are there. Laws are important. There are measures to implement them because, again, if you go to our prisons, nowadays it's said that the largest population in prison is that is serving time for offenses related to sexual violations. We call it the Sexual Offences Act type of crimes. So that to me is an indication that people who commit these crimes eventually do get apprehended, and they go to court and they get arrested. They get sent to prison. So the law is not necessarily silent on some of these things. even the case on the rider, the boda rider, I do believe that it's an ongoing case right now that has been taken up by the authorities, as it were, and it will eventually achieve successful prosecution. So I believe that we do have a place for the law. It might be slow in some instances, but I have faith that it won't lose its bite, and eventually it will promote what we're looking at in terms of achieving gender equality.
We do hope so indeed. And I'm getting a question from social media where there's a guest who's asking a question which will bring us back, but for clarification matters, what is the difference between gender equity and gender equality?
Well, gender equality is where we basically say that, first of all, I think, let me start by defining what gender is. And gender is the socially ascribed roles of men and women. Many people tend to think that gender is man and woman, but that is not so. It is the socially ascribed roles of men and women. For example, we have women being relegated as caregivers and men being relegated as providers. That's the most traditional role you can ever imagine. But now, when we talk about gender equality, we are talking about there being parity between men and women, such that they both can be able to achieve the same things. And gender equity is basically just an extension of that, creating equal platform for both genders to be able to access opportunities, services, and to be able to access opportunities and services at par, creating a level playing field for both genders to be able to achieve opportunities and services at par. So there's not really, when we say we want gender equality, we are not asking women, we are not asking to be equal to men. We are not as in equal to men by saying that we want to be men. No, what we are asking for is that we have equal opportunities, so that if it's a question of, for example, going to school, that a boy child has that opportunity to go to school in a similar manner as a girl child, and that we take away all challenges or barriers that might be able to hinder this girl from going to school. So it doesn't stop at ensuring that there's a school with classrooms and children to go to. You look at the structural challenges, you look at cultural challenges that might affect this two people. For example, with girls, you have things that affect girl child that may not affect a boy child, like menstruation. Can we provide a girl child with the necessary sanitary measures that allow this girl to still continue accessing education, so that we're not saying that she's free to go to school, but on certain days she can't go because she's menstruating and does not have the necessary hygiene items. For the boy child, again, it's structural as well as it is contextual. So if, for instance, you come from, let's say, the conflict-plagued regions, we're not saying that, okay, the boy child is free to go to school, but because we're in conflict, let them go and fight as the girl child goes to school. And then once the fight is over, they'll come and continue with school. No, we're saying that both of them need to be in school, in classroom at the same time, so that whatever is being taught, everyone has access to it, can be able to understand what it is, and compete with each other at a level playing field.
I'm getting the fact that gender issues cannot just be left to women. They're not the only ones affected. And even more, I'm getting the fact that there is a need for both genders to actually coalesce and try and come together to try and bring the parity around. Now, looking at that from that aspect, what would you like, what would be your word to those who actually view the idea of trying to bring this parity as oppressive, perhaps, to the boy child?
Well, for me, I would urge them to look at it differently, because that affirmative action is not looking at oppressing the boy child. As you say, we cannot win the gender war if we're just walking alone. Nobody can be able to achieve great lengths by walking alone. We have to walk together in order to help each other. So gender equality has to be achieved by bringing on board all genders, men and women, and looking at the issues that affect each of them critically and honestly. And I say this because there are issues. I mean, when you listen to the proponents of boy child who say that the boy child has been left behind while the girl child has been allowed to thrive, has been allowed to progress at the expense of the boy child. What they're saying is that there are particular issues that are very, they touch directly on the boy child, while they don't touch on the girl child. And an example is given in the northern Kenya, where we say that, for example, FGM is pervasive and affects girls. But then someone comes and says, but at the same time, we have perpetual conflict, and this perpetual conflict affects the boy child. So a girl child will not be given a gun to go and fight. She may have to be married off early, but then the boy child is given a gun to go and fight. So who is talking for this boy child who's constantly asked to stop, growing up as a child and become a child soldier? And I say all of these people are right, that we cannot achieve gender equality by just promoting the girl child while leaving behind the boy child. And neither can we, choose to uphold the boy child and leave behind the girl child. We have to look at the issues that affect both genders critically and honestly, and agree on how to address each of these issues as it pertains them.
And as we finalize, Winnie, should we break this bias that is evidently there? What are the gains for us? And perhaps if we are to avoid or rather play like there is nothing happening, what would be the risk for us?
Well, we have a long way to go in breaking the bias. And I'm happy that, there are good strides that are being made, progressive ways in which advocates of gender equality are progressing towards achieving gender equality, or rather breaking the bias. So you are asking what would happen should we break the bias? Should we break the bias? That would be the ideal world, whereby each person has equal opportunities. And I think at that point, it will be a question of emphasizing on the strengths of each gender, so that we don't also get to a situation where inequalities start existing, because when you have people at par, you might slacken, and with these new challenges will emerge that will probably marginalize one of the said genders. So there has to be constant vigilance onto the gender challenges that might affect either gender. And it's important to note that these challenges are ever emerging. So in yesteryears, for example, terrorism was not an issue, but now it is, and it is directly affecting men more than it is affecting women. So we have to interrogate those emerging issues and look at how we can mitigate them so that inequalities do not continue to thrive. And I guess the second part of your question was about well, should we not achieve it? What should we continue to do? What should we do? And I'd say that we need to continue fighting towards destroying the structural barriers that exist. We have to have concerted efforts at advocating for equality, putting in place measures, including legislative and policy frameworks that will promote gender equality. And more importantly, one of the things that is obviously left behind, which I tend to think is one of the most important ingredients in achieving gender equality, is awareness creation, because awareness creation is generally lacking. And it affects how we perceive gender equality. It affects how we perceive gender concerns. Because if you look at, for example, what happened with the border riders and the reactionary measure that was taken by the president and other organs that are charged with dispensing justice, is that people tend to feel that when we react towards, an issue such as that, that it's a punitive. Yeah, it's punitive. It's more of you know, you're oppressing one side of the divide while advancing the other side. But the truth is, if there was awareness creation on what gender equality is, and that is at a societal level, because yes, there are people who do understand what gender equality is, and there are people who understand what is right and what is wrong, because the conversations have also oscillated around issues of right and wrong, you know, outside of gender. Well, the thing is, we would have more, you know, respect for each other. And this means that the cultural biases that exist that continue to perpetuate gender inequalities would be more known by you know, people in society. And you know, when we talk about cultural biases, the conversation does not stop at just pointing out what they are, but pointing out what are these biases and how can we be able to address them or tackle them, so that they stop being impediments to advancement of women, or rather impediments to societal advancement. But, you know, it becomes a conversation of how can everyone participate in safeguarding each other for the advancement of the society, because that is what is more important. So awareness creation has to be a major part of what we do. And with this awareness creation, we also have to cultivate consciousness amongst ourselves on the need to be more vigilant of each other and to be more you know, concerned about the welfare and progress of each other more than pulling each other down. And that would, in my view, help us achieve gender equality faster than where we are at the moment.
Thank you, Winnie. I wouldn't put it better. Awareness, tolerance, and the realization that the journey is not a race against the genders, yes?
Yes, the journey is definitely not a race against the genders.
Indeed.
It
And
is
also,
a walk, and we have to work together.
yeah, and wonderful. And also, I'd like to inform you, breaking news coming through. LSK president is Eric Theory. Eric Theory has taken the helm as the LSK president. Winnie, you're now informed.
Yes, thank you, and congratulations to him.
Thank you for actually creating time for us right here. And we hope we can actually engage you in another moment. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. We now take our short break, second break on KUTV Primetime News. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more news.
Hata katika ulimwengu wa binadamu utapata kwamba wanadamu wako katika tabaka mbalimbali. Kuna wale ambao kwamba wao wako katika daraja za juu, kuna wengine wako katika daraja za katikati, na vile vile kuna wengine ambao kwamba wako katika daraja ya chini. Basi vile vile katika ulimwengu wa malaika, Mwenyezi Mungu aliyetukuka amewapangilia katika daraja tofauti tofauti. Kwa hivyo lazima tujue daraja zao. Je, ni nani kiongozi wa malaika wote na alikuwa akifanya kazi gani?
Welcome to this special edition of Technovation Show, and today we are at Kariobangi to bring you matters jua kali.
Vijana wengi hawapendi sababu kuvumilia, unavumilia for 3 to 4 months ndio ushike rada. Jua kawaida jua kali kitu tunatengeneza na order, na kabla mteja kuje na kama display.
Hii mashini ndio mama ya workshop yote, sababu hii mashini inatengeneza spare parts za magari, za mashini, na inachonga meno aina kama hii.
Welcome back to KUTV Prime Time News. And now on an agricultural beat, the Moringa Banana Irrigation Scheme in Mwimbi ward of Tharaka Nithi County has turned around fortunes for farmers in that county. The project that was commissioned by President Uhuru Kenyatta in 2013 and has been a center for technology transfers for the youths in the area. Bentura Kwamboka, with the comprehensive report.
Over 16,000 people are among the beneficiaries of the Moringa banana irrigation in Mwembe, Tharaka-Nithi County. The project that was launched by President Uhuru Kenyatta in his first year in the office has so far created opportunities for local traders and has had a capacity to grow vegetables, fruits and fodder crops. Speaking during a tour in the region while addressing Eastern Region Development Implementation and Coordination Committee, the project chair, Danson Mburia, said the project has banished hunger from the Middle East and enabled children to attend schools religiously.
Ng'ombe 1,150 sababu wanataka 30 liters and above. Kwa hivyo tunafurahia serikali yetu sana. Tunatoa shukrani sana, hata mkiona ule His Excellency umwambie ile mradi alianza, kila mtu anambariki, anasema Mungu amweke vizuri, amuongeze nguvu na pia upendo, sababu amesaidia watu wa kaunti hii wote bila kujali ni nani, na kila mtoto anaenda shule vizuri. Kwa hivyo sisi tunafurahi.
The project has also been a center for technology transfer among the young people and has created hundreds of employment, with calls for more youths to join in the venture as it helps in curbing bad vices that are associated with antisocial behaviors.
Mimi naambia vijana wenye tuko, kitu ya kwanza tuache drugs, tujikeep busy, tutafute kazi, tupate cha kufanya.
Ya ajira vijana kwa hizi kijiji wengi sana wanafanya kazi hapa. Ukiangalia hii kazi before mtu aweze kupanda kama hizi unahitaji watu wengi sana, so hata watu wanasaidia sana. Hii maji imesaidia hata watu pia wanasoma vile sisi tunafanya hii kazi. Tunaleta wengine hapa wanafundishwa vile watu wanapanda, ndio wakitoka hapa wanaenda makwao pia wanafanya the same things. So sio ati kila kitu iko concentrated kwa mali pamoja.
10 years on, the project has proved that government money, when properly invested, can transform lives immensely. Bentura Komboka, KUTV.
We move overseas, where Israel has emerged as the mediator between Russia and Ukraine. Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is the only world leader who has traveled to Russia to meet with President Vladimir Putin since the assault began, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky this weekend thanked Bennett for his mediation efforts. Our partners at the VOA, Linda Grantstein and Ricky Rosen, filed the following report.
Thousands have rallied in New York City in support of Ukraine since the start of the Russian invasion. Russian immigrant Sasha Natsintseva had felt welcome to join in at first.
I overheard some American guys behind me saying not very good things about Russians. They got a little aggressive. They said some nasty things to me. And there were another 2 Ukrainian people who I heard them saying go back to Russia.
Her case is not unusual, as opposition against Moscow's actions is manifesting itself against Russians in the US. House restaurant, for instance, was reportedly vandalized. It's the cancel culture hitting Russian businesses, says Mikhail Podolsky, who was born and raised in Moscow.
Stores try to get rid of the Russian vodka. Online communities, they change Russian group to Russian-speaking group. Russian stores, they remove signs that it's Russian, just, I guess, to keep themselves safe.
Yulia Luzhnikova hopes the animosity doesn't get worse.
It's very sad that this is happening. People are people. I don't think we need to generalize just by someone having a Russian surname that becomes an enemy.
Less and less normal words. The Russian diaspora is working to raise awareness and put pressure on Moscow to end the war, says Natalia Arno, president of the Free Russia Foundation, which advocates for a free, democratic Russia.
We are organizing a huge campaign, information campaign, to tell the truth so that these exiled Russians can target those who are in country and send them the truth, send them photos, send them videos.
The message seems to be getting across. Protesters have taken to the streets in Russia, despite facing arrest and years in prison. Peter Litsky, who was born in Moscow, worries that tough American and European sanctions will undermine change in Russia.
The people are becoming more poor, they are concentrated on their survival, they will probably not have time to work around changing the political system.
Marina Du has relatives in both Russia and Ukraine. She understands the negative perceptions some have of Russians these days. But it's time, she says, to come together and end the senseless suffering of war for both sides.
I'm just hoping that people will not escalate this hate, not provoke hate towards each other, but just unite our, so every effort we can do to support people in Ukraine and in Russia.
VOA reached out to several Russians in the U.S. who support the invasion of Ukraine, but they declined to be interviewed.
And now into the world of sports, where the chairperson of the Football Kenya Federation Caretaker Committee, retired Justice Aaron Ringera, has urged FKF branch officials to work closely in order to help save the country's football situation. The committee was forced to go back to the drawing board after invited officials drawn from 20 FKF branches gave the planned meeting wide a berth, citing illegalities, with only 2 branches, namely Kisii and Nairobi West, sending representatives. Rebutting complaints from the FKF branch officials, Caretaker Committee Head of League and Games and Competitions, Ali Almor, noted as much as FIFA statutes exist, they will never be supreme to the Kenyan Constitution. We swing our way to golf, where after hosting Kenya Magical Open at Muthaiga Golf Club, focus now shifts to the third leg of the Safaricom Golf Tour, slated for this weekend. The tournament, which has attracted over 200 amateur and professional golfers, will be taking part in the 18-hole corporate tournament this Saturday, with over 100 junior golfers set to grace the course on Sunday, with Junior Golf Tour set to be played in 14 golf clubs across the country. Now, French side Paris Saint-Germain blew a 2-0 advantage over Real Madrid as the two sides